First question.
Yes, so I know that you haven't yet committed on Representative Boebert to a specific measure. Congressman Bowman has called for Boebert to lose both of her committee assignments, though. I'm wondering what message you think that sends to some of your members if the Democratic caucus, given that the Republican caucus likely isn't going to act on this, doesn't take strong enough measures against Boebert.
Let's focus on the second part of your question. Why isn't the Republican conference going to act on this? What more does Kevin McCarthy need to see? I mean, what more does this guy really need to see? He's got Marjorie Taylor Greene completely out of control, Gosar out of control, Lauren Boebert out of control, Crossfire. He's trying to mediate the dispute, can't do anything, and we think this guy in this conference is going to solve problems on behalf of the American people. They can't. So, as Pete indicated, we're going to continue to focus on dealing with the challenges facing the American people. We're going to focus on crushing the virus, focus on creating an economy that works for everyday Americans, and making sure that we allow for opportunity in every single zip code by building back better. Now, as it relates to consequences for Lauren Boebert, certainly I think there are active discussions underway to make sure that Lauren Boebert is held accountable, particularly given the likelihood that we may not see any accountability coming from the four-ring malignant circus on the other side of the aisle. But hope springs eternal, and we'll see what emerges over the next day or two. At the same time, we're continuing to have discussions, leadership, House Democratic Caucus, to make sure that we support our colleague. Because clearly, this type of dangerous rhetoric is endangering Ilhan Omar. And it endangers other members of this Congress. And words matter. We saw the consequences of dangerous rhetoric on January 6th.
Can you say more about which options are on the table?
I'm not going to get out ahead of any discussions that we're having in terms of leadership and the caucus.
I actually wanted to ask you about threats against members based on the voicemail that Representative Omar played last night. Can you talk about how your members are feeling about the security here at the Capitol, the security at home, the level of threats they're getting? How much of that is drawn from this kind of rhetoric from January 6th, et cetera?
Well, I've said a lot on this issue. These discussions are ongoing, and of course, our chairwoman of the House Administration Committee, of which Pete sits on, so maybe I'll yield to Pete, and he's obviously also on the January 6th commission, but these are active conversations that are underway. Notwithstanding that, the House Democratic Caucus's commitment to delivering for the American people remains steadfast. We are in the midst right now of doing at least 1,000 infrastructure events across the country by the end of the year. To make it clear what has been done with tremendous leadership from President Biden, we've had infrastructure week after infrastructure week after infrastructure week forever in this town. Never yielded anything. And now we've got a new era of robust infrastructure in America. And notwithstanding whatever the threat environment may be, and certainly it's exacerbated by the reckless Republican radical rhetoric on the other side of the aisle, we are going to continue to do our jobs and communicate with the American people on infrastructure and on building back better.
In order to address the work that is so important to the American public, members have to feel safe doing their jobs. And I think that's kind of the root of your question. And I don't think the American public focuses a lot on this. And it's something that the chairman and I care a lot about is the fact that some members continue to feel threatened, both here by their colleagues or by folks sending, emails and text messages. It's sad. It's an unfortunate part of what we have to deal with at times. We need to make sure, and Chair Lofgren, focuses on this, that members, feel safe, and we have every tool available to us to think through security protocols, to work with our staffs and our district offices as well. I'm pleased that Democratic leadership and Chair Lofgren, have made those resources, available and continue to keep an eye out for that. So that's going to be a focus, is making sure members on both sides of the aisle are safe doing their jobs. Unfortunately, it feels that some of our colleagues on the other side, don't share that focus and are doing things that actively promote those threat levels, increasing.
Do you, if I may just real quick, do you hear from members currently that are concerned about their safety either in the building or at home?
I think I speak for the chairman that we hear from members on a range of topics each and every day, and this is one of them. This is something that we continue to have discussions about and are focused on our members, making sure that they can do their jobs both in their district and here in D.C.
I actually have a question for you, Congressman, if I can, a January 6th question, no disrespect. You guys had a little bit of a breakthrough yesterday with Mark Meadows agreeing to testify in some capacity. What do you think he can tell you that nobody else can?
I think it's important that we tell the full and complete story about the events of January 5th and January 6th, everything that happened from the election until that point, the president's focus, the former president's focus on continuing to fan the flames of disinformation. And I think that his former chief of staff will give us a glimpse of that. But I think it's also important to focus not just on the substance of the conversations that those two had, but clearly he had a lot of interaction and conversations on the campaign side. And so I think we're going to have a lot of discussions on his efforts, both working outside of the building as well as the official capacity that he held. So I think that there's a lot of questioning there that can be done, and we look forward to his cooperation, and we'll assess what the next steps are after his discussion and deposition with us.
And on Jeffrey Clark, you guys are going to vote tonight to start the contempt process with him. He's not a household name. How important of a figure do you think he was behind the scenes during the lead up to January 6th?
Yeah, just the public reporting alone on the Senate Judiciary report, clearly shows that Jeffrey Clark was a key effort within the Department of Justice, using the brand of the Department of Justice to continue to stoke the fear and the misinformation campaign that the former president waged. And the fact that his two superiors have already spoken publicly to the Senate committee as well as to us, shows us that he shouldn't have anything to hide. But unfortunately, that's what he's afraid of. So we'll exercise the next steps, and we'll bring it to the full House floor after the business committee of this evening.